is titled Redefining Wellness, which is Women Leading the Health Tech Revolution. Let me give you some guidance. A man should not be moderating this panel. So that's first start. Second is, please, please, please look at the QR code. You can feel free to ask questions. We've got an amazing panel set up. Darlene as at Next Life Sciences, has been a visionary in this space. Hanadie Yousef is here, who's a CEO and co-founder of a company and a great investor in Sujude. So why don't you come on up and we'll get started. Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Very honored to be on the stage with Hanadie and Darlene. Maybe we can start off with some intros. I've been an investor for the past 5-6 years, have done a lot in women's health and led a lot of the partnerships with some of my past portfolio companies deeper into everything women's health, from reproductive to adolescence and to perimenopause and menopause. Hanadie, how about you go first?
Sure. Many of you might have heard me earlier today during the demo elevator pitches. My name is Hanadie Yousef, CEO and co-founder of Juvena Therapeutics, which we launched in mid-2018, and I'm a scientist by training with an accrued expertise in the biology of aging and mechanisms underlying tissue degeneration through over 2 decades of research, but specifically a decade spent at UC Berkeley and Stanford during my PhD and postdoc work prior to launching the company based on many of those ideas back in 2018.
And Darlene?
Thank you. So I also started as a scientist. My PhD is in organic chemistry. I was synthesizing anti-tumor compounds back then. And I was fortunate to work in 3 really large global companies launching products around the world. And then I made it to this wonderful area of the country called the Bay Area. I actually lived in San Francisco, just 2 blocks away on Folsom and Embarcadero back then. And I decided to work in startups. I thought there was a real need for a person with my background to take something from an idea that a founder has all the way to commercialization. So I've done numerous startups, raised a lot of capital, had numerous exits, and just honored to be here and be part of Transform VC's event.
Amazing. Okay, so the title of this session is Redefining Wellness, Women Leading the Health Tech Revolution. From both of your perspectives, how has the traditional definition of wellness changed in the past couple years, and also how has it affected women and other minorities disproportionately?
Sure, I'm happy to give it a shot first. I'd say that traditionally the healthcare system has been more of a sick care system, where for the first several decades of our lives, we're growing, we're basically taking for granted our health and vitality. And then as we get older, beginning in our 40s, 50s, we really start feeling some of the effects of aging that really leads to degenerative diseases and often chronic multiple comorbidities. And with a growing, aging global population, even today now, there's actually more people on planet Earth that are over the age of 60 than under the age of 5. There is now this huge need to really transform the healthcare industry into one that truly is about healthcare and really enabling folks to live healthier for longer, as opposed to really treating those end-stage terminal diseases and often symptoms that result from an unhealthy aging system and environment.
I would answer it in a slightly different way. I think one thing that's happened to all of us in medicine as well as companies is we look at things gender specific. And I'll give you an example. Probably 20 years ago, we finally realized that women suffer from heart disease. That seems like such a basic concept, but doctors and the pharmaceutical industry were treating men and ignoring women, the symptoms in women. Women started dying, in large amounts, and finally it dawned on people, this is not gender specific. This affects both men and women. And that's why right now, my company is looking at reproductive health from a man's perspective. It's always been seen from a woman's perspective. So it's one of the barriers I think have to be broken, is for us to always look at things not from a gender-specific perspective, but as a human being.
But and then one thing to kind of add is it's actually kind of crazy that even up until very recently, until just the last couple decades, women wouldn't even participate in clinical trials. So from the scientific experiments, they would be done in all male animal models, and then trials would be done in men. And so oftentimes, even to this day, a lot of the drugs out there aren't really catered towards the also differences between female and male physiology.
Amazing. Let's double tap on the structural barriers. So you have a pretty big background, Darlene, from big pharma to smaller biotech. So what are some of these structural barriers and how can we approach them?
I see them as opportunities, not barriers. I always advise people, if you get the opportunity to work in a really large company and to get training, understand culture, understand all the competitive advantages of a well-run large company, then when you transition to a startup company, you have all that knowledge and you have all those skills, and then you could find what is your unique capability in a startup that's going to make you compete successfully against a really large, mega company. So I see it as an opportunity to really take the best of the large companies and really translate it into startups to be nimble, to be agile, to be risk takers, things that large companies most likely can't do.
Amazing. And then turning it to you, Hanadie, you're really humble, but you're one of the leaders in the science of aging. So how are you utilizing this new biology of aging into new age wellness?
Thanks, Sujude. I really appreciate the compliment. So at Juvena, we really look at the biology of aging from the lens of really understanding the proteins that are circulating in our blood and outside our tissues, and the way that those proteins and the signaling pathways they induce change in expression levels with aging and in the context of degenerative diseases that are age-related. These different protein paths in a very young and healthy environment are at more what we call homeostatic levels, where they maintain a tissue's health and ability to repair and regenerate naturally. But during aging, through the changes in expression or loss of function, even due to sometimes mutations, that leads to a loss of tissue homeostasis and the onset of debilitating symptoms such as increase in chronic systemic inflammation. I think many of us experience that, the loss of our own body's stem cells' ability to really get the right cues to repair and regenerate. And so at Juvena, we mine stem cell secretomes, meaning proteins secreted by human stem cells that are highly naturally regenerative, and we match them to receptors in which they're modulating these changes in signaling that occur with aging to help restore homeostasis and enable our own body cells and tissues to repair and regenerate the way they do in young, healthy environments.
Amazing. And then one more follow-up question to that is clearly utilizing AI in your company as well. So can you also explain that a bit?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Sujude. So, one of the also kind of exciting sort of revolutions in technologies that happened that opened so many doors for drug discovery and development in the biotechnology sector was starting in like the 2010s through to today, this advent in the latest sequencing technologies that are now allowing us to sequence at an incredibly rapid and cost-effective pace both DNA, RNA, epigenetics, and proteins. And so that is literally dubbed the multi-omics revolution. And with that sequencing capability is now massive amounts of data, more data than we ever really had historically, that we can now leverage artificial intelligence technologies to help us build better diagnostics, as well as even more rapidly and effectively identify drug targets for numerous diseases that up until today still have no cures or therapeutic interventions.
Thank you. And then to Darlene, you mentioned focusing on both male and female reproductive health. How is focusing on also male contraception so critical to the future of couples' wellness?
Yeah, it's amazing that we continue to put the burden of reproductive health on women. We now know, I stated earlier today, the statistics of how many women cannot tolerate hormonal birth control, yet we keep on just putting more and more hormonal birth control out there. And what we see are young men, 18 to 49 is really the demographic we're looking at. They really are struggling because they want to help this person that they're in a relationship or marriage with, and they feel literally helpless. So by providing a male contraceptive that lasts long, has minimal or no side effects, easily reversed, that's going to take the burden off of women who right now are suffering with contraception. The other statistic that's really troubling is because so many women can't tolerate birth control, we're seeing numbers of couples not using birth control in the high 20%. So that's why that number, 50% unplanned pregnancy, it really makes a lot of sense when you look at the underlying data that shows that there really aren't good contraceptive options right now. So I think this whole category of new contraceptives that are non-hormonal, that aren't systemic drugs, that are medical devices like ours, I think this will be the future of the whole industry. And it really helps women to alleviate that burden, because right now, the fear of pregnancy is so high, especially in this country, because of the legislation, that we're seeing young people in their 20s having vasectomies, tubal ligations. Those are pretty permanent options. So it's really heartbreaking that those are the options that people are relying on today.
Amazing. And then it takes quite a bit to get a new contraception to market. How about we dig in there and any advice you give anyone else in the audience on taking a new drug?
Yeah, great question. The first piece of advice I would give, and it's something that served me well my whole career, is always understand your regulatory pathway. And if you're an FDA-regulated product, talk to the FDA right away. Have a meeting where you lay out your plan. These are the clinical studies I want to do. Will this get me approval? And then each study you want to do, will this study answer your questions? So I always advise people, and it's something I live by, don't do any study, don't spend any money until the FDA tells you, yes, that's exactly what we want. There's still a chance they may want something slightly different, but at least the majority is correct. So developing a medical device is very different than developing a drug. Drugs are systemic, so they affect all the organs in your body. So that's why the drug pathway is much more difficult. It's a lot longer, a lot more subjects, thousands of subjects, where a medical device, because we're really inert, we're just looking for local effects. So medical device pathway is a lot simpler because of that. And that's why, a medical device can get to the market a lot quicker than a drug, with a lot less money as well.
Okay, amazing. And this question's for both of you, not just thinking about the regulatory paths, but what role can corporate partnerships, philanthropy, different government initiatives across the world play in bridging the gap between your innovation and widespread adoption?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I should pick one each time. Sorry, Hanadie first.
I'd say that it's critical. It's critical that agencies involved in the regulatory process, both here in the U.S. as well as globally, as well as the large biopharma industry that does have sufficient capital, but is often seeking innovation in terms of new avenues for drug discovery and development, really come together to help small startups that are often brimming with ideas, innovation, excitement in terms of the potential that their products can bring to the market, but are very often cash strapped as well as resource strapped and don't often have as many of those stronger connections. So by partnering, some of these pharma companies in particular will get access to that innovation, that rapid discovery, development, new product formation, but then be able to actually leverage their amazing resources when it comes to really being able to translate it through the later stage and more costly clinical development and commercialization path, while just like what Darlene said, it's so important to really build that relationship with regulatory agencies. And in a globalized world that we live in, you can't also just have it be in one country, but you really want to start working with multiple countries in order to start thinking about those trials that can ultimately benefit a global population.
Darlene?
Yeah, thank you. There's so many different facets. So definitely corporate investors are important. They provide, as Hanadie just said, they provide a lot of expertise, a lot of huge infrastructure and capabilities. The one caution of a startup is just be sure that corporation, that investor acquires you, doesn't just put what you're doing on the shelf, be it for competitive reasons or because all of a sudden it doesn't fit their strategy. We've seen that happen before, so that's a two-edged sword. I think it's really important to acknowledge that we couldn't do what we're doing without investors. So we're extremely appreciative of all of our investors. We do get non-dilutive grants. My company right now has one from the Male Contraceptive Initiative. It's a 2-year grant. We have SBIR grants, phase 2, which are quite large, right now under review. So I think it really is incumbent on CEOs and founders to look at those non-dilutive grants it really helps your investors. It helps their money work even harder. And then partnerships come in all different forms. I remember in one company, the American Cancer Society was a strong collaborator, American Heart Association in another, and now, believe it or not, Planned Parenthood is a great partner with us right now. They're preparing communication vehicles for men. They've really embraced what we're doing. People may have seen them as potentially seeing us as competitive, but they've been, just the best partner we can imagine.
Yeah, and yeah, couldn't agree more, Darlene, with everything you said. And Juvena too has really, in fact, I would actually say it was the grants and non-dilutive funding that really opened doors before we even had the type of platform and data readouts that really then accelerated venture capital investment. So getting grants from the National Institute of Health, as well as the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine, and then importantly, also leveraging those corporate partnerships to validate your technology, where often, once you do get that partnership, such as our partnership now with Eli Lilly, that really does open doors to really proving to the venture community that there is something real, underneath or behind the curtains, and I think it helps accelerate your innovation.
Amazing. Okay, so both of you guys are scientists turned entrepreneurs, leading science-forward companies. What's the biggest mindset change you had to do going from a scientist into entrepreneurship that isn't science-related? Darlene, please go first.
Yeah, great question. The thing I learned early in my career was that my boss is really the consumer. So whether it's the patient, the consumer of a product, that's who my focus should be on. I should be always asking myself questions. What does that person want? What does that person need? How should my product be, designed? The other thing that really, I think, an important lesson for me, transitioning from a scientist to an executive, is really like having your finger on the pulse of the industry. So a great example, our website gets a lot of influx from men looking to see how they can get Plan A. And there was one young man a couple years ago who was really desperate to find a new contraceptive. His, at the time, his fiancée was really struggling with birth control, in fact, to the extent that she had a brain aneurysm. So they knew they could not use hormonal birth control any longer. And he reached out to the company, and we responded, and he became our biggest investor. So he's part of a VC firm that not only invested in an earlier round, but he recently reinvested in our current round. So that's something that's really served me well in my career is listen in on those consumer lines. Listen to what the people are really saying. It really helps you understand, not only is it gratifying to see the impact you're having, but it also could help you to better focus on what the end result should be.
Amazing.
Yeah, and briefly for me, it was really in learning how to share our story, our mission and vision from the perspective of really trying to build that comprehensive business model and communicate how not only what we're doing and by investing with us will actually revolutionize a whole new pipeline of tissue restorative therapeutics, but what the landscape is and path towards massive return on investment and ensuring that we really have in mind our fiduciary duties to our stakeholders. When I first started pitching, I was often way too technical and would try to kind of give these scientific lectures or descriptions that would cause people to start wanting to pass out, you know what I mean? And so really changing that language and being able to speak more from the perspective of the business rather than just the science.
Amazing. And then let's move on to one of the audience's questions, which I think is a big one. What overlooked area of women's health is the next multi-billion-dollar opportunity?
I think it's going to be in therapies and treatments that can extend fertility. It is kind of crazy and still a big mystery in the field of the biology of aging that despite the fact that we're now living decades longer than we used to, the onset of menopause for a woman really hasn't changed in centuries, and it still remains in our 40s to 50s. And so if we can really unlock that ability to extend fertility, I think that will be a major advantage for women.
Amazing. And Darlene?
Yeah, just real quickly, it relates to fertility as well for women, but we see women struggling with endometriosis, PCOS, et cetera. These are debilitating problems for women that cause them to have early hysterectomies, affect their fertility, affect their quality of life. So I think that's the next big breakthrough. And happy to say we have a pipeline product that's aimed towards that.
Amazing. Well, thank you again to the audience for paying attention and asking those lovely questions. And then Hanadie and Darlene, thank you again.